Emily Carter, about to give birth to her first daughter, faces unexpected complications during childbirth that lead to a near-death experience. Amid a sense of peace and disorientation, Emily encounters a mysterious young woman who seems to know her in ways she can't explain. The encounter brings surprising revelations and a request that defies everything Emily believed possible. What could this young woman want? And what secrets from the past are about to be revealed? I'm Anthony Bennett and welcome to my Near-Death Experience channel. Let's listen to the story together. Emily Carter, 32 years old, was experiencing one of the most anticipated moments of her life. She and her husband, Michael, were about to become parents for the first time, something they had both dreamed of for years. Pregnancy was a journey full of emotions, from discovery to the day they finally found out they were having a girl. They decided to name her Sophie, a name that meant wisdom, something Emily had always valued in her own life. The couple prepared everything with lots of love, from the pink room to the clothes and toys, eagerly awaiting Sophie's arrival. Emily has always been a strong and determined woman. As a lawyer, she was used to dealing with difficult situations and making important decisions. However, nothing could have prepared her for the emotional and physical challenges of pregnancy. Although she faced some difficulties over the 9 months, she remained positive, believing that it would all be worth it the moment she could hold her daughter in her arms. Every ultrasound, every kick from Sophie in her womb, filled Emily with indescribable happiness, making her forget any discomfort. Michael's support was essential throughout the pregnancy. He was by Emily's side at every doctor's appointment, every shopping trip for the baby, and every sleepless night Emily worried about Sophie's health. The love between them grew every day, strengthening the bond that was already solid. Michael, a caring and caring man, made sure Emily felt loved and cared for, knowing she was about to become a mother, a role she looked forward to playing with all her heart. As her due date approached, Emily felt a mixture of anxiety and joy. She knew that giving birth was a time full of uncertainty, but she was confident that everything would go well. The chosen hospital was renowned, and the medical team that accompanied her was experienced and trustworthy. Emily spent her days imagining the moment she would see Sophie's face for the first time, what it would be like to hold her daughter and finally start this new phase of her life. She couldn't wait to be a mother. Despite her excitement, there was a shadow of concern in Emily's heart, something she avoided sharing with Michael or her family. She was afraid of the unknown, of the complications that could arise. Deep down, there was a voice that whispered uncertainty, but she always tried to push those thoughts away, focusing on the joy she felt when thinking about Sophie. Emily didn't want anything to tarnish the happiness of this long-awaited moment. With her birth imminent, Emily spent the last few days of her pregnancy mentally and emotionally preparing herself for the birth. She meditated, read books about motherhood, and talked to other mothers about her experiences. Although she knew that each birth was unique, she felt more prepared and determined to face any challenge that might arise. What she didn't know was that the biggest challenge of her life was about to happen, something that would forever change her perception of life, death, and a mother's unconditional love. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. It was a sunny morning when Emily started to feel her first contractions. Michael, already prepared for this moment, quickly took her to the hospital. During the journey, the two tried to remain calm, but the excitement and anxiety were palpable. Emily held Michael's hand tightly, trying to control her breathing as the contractions increased in intensity. Every minute that passed brought them closer to the moment they would see Sophie for the first time. At the hospital, Emily was welcomed by the medical team who accompanied her throughout her pregnancy. They guided her to the delivery room, where preparations began immediately. Emily was nervous, but also full of hope. She knew that this was the moment she had waited so long for and prepared for with so much love and care. As doctors and nurses moved around her, adjusting equipment and monitoring her vital signs, Emily tried to focus on staying calm and thinking about her daughter. The following hours were intense. The contractions became stronger and more frequent, and Emily began to feel the pain that so many women had described before her. Michael was by her side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering words of encouragement. He was just as emotional as she was, trying to be the rock Emily needed at that moment. Still, there was a growing tension in the room, a feeling that something was about to happen. As labor progressed, doctors began to notice signs of concern. Sophie's heart rate was irregular, and Emily was starting to show signs of extreme fatigue. The medical team decided it was time to act quickly. The doctor responsible for the birth informed Emily and Michael that an emergency cesarean section would be necessary. The news came as a shock, but Emily knew the most important thing was to ensure Sophie's safety. She agreed to the procedure, although fear began to take over her. Emily was rushed to the operating room, where staff were preparing for the cesarean section. Michael had to wait outside, which left him extremely worried. He knew Emily was in good hands, but anxiety was inevitable. Emily, lying on the operating table, began to feel a range of intense emotions: fear, uncertainty, but also an unwavering determination to see her daughter born safely. She focused on the image of Sophie, trying to stay strong as the doctors worked around her. During the procedure, something unexpected happened. Emily started to feel bad. Her body gave signs that something was wrong. Doctors acted quickly to stabilize her, but Emily felt her consciousness begin to slip away. A deep fear took hold of her, and her last sight before everything went dark was the operating room and the worried face of one of the doctors. She didn't know what was happening, but a feeling that something terrible was about to happen took over her mind. And then, the world around him disappeared. When Emily opened her eyes, she was no longer in the operating room. Instead, she found herself in a completely different place, an undefined space, surrounded by a soft, warm light. Everything seemed surreal, as if in a dream. There was an eerie tranquility to the place, but also a sense of loss and disorientation. Emily looked around, trying to understand where she was and how she got there. She felt light, as if her body was no longer present, but her mind was completely alert. As she walked through this mysterious place, Emily began to hear a muffled sound. It was a soft cry, which seemed to be coming from somewhere nearby. She followed the sound, feeling her heart speed up as she got closer. When he finally found the source of the crying, he saw a young woman, crouched in a corner, her face covered by her hands. The sight of the young woman touched Emily deeply, as the pain in that girl's crying was palpable, almost as if it were her own pain. The young woman seemed to be in complete despair, and Emily felt an irresistible need to reach out and comfort her. Emily hesitated for a moment, but then approached the young woman carefully. "Hey, is everything okay?" he asked, his voice soft and full of empathy. The young woman slowly raised her head, revealing a face wet with tears. To Emily's surprise, there was something strangely familiar about that face, as if she already knew her from somewhere. The young woman's eyes were filled with sadness, but also with a silent plea. "Please don't leave me," the young woman said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I need you." Confused and emotional, Emily knelt beside the young woman. "Who are you?" he asked, although in his heart something began to form, an inexplicable connection. The young woman looked at Emily with eyes that reflected an ocean of emotions. "It's me, Mommy." "It's me, Sophie," she said, the words coming out as a whisper. Emily felt her world fall apart upon hearing this. How could it be possible? Sophie wasn't even born yet. But as she looked into the young woman's eyes, she knew, somehow, that it was true. The shock of the revelation left Emily speechless. Tears began to stream down her face as she tried to process what was happening. "But, how? How is that possible?" she murmured, her voice cracking. Sophie, still crying, came closer, holding Emily's hands. "I don't know, Mommy. I just know you can't leave. I need you. Please come back to me." Sophie's words were a desperate cry, and Emily felt her heart break. She desperately wanted to believe, but fear and doubt consumed her. Before Emily could say anything else, Sophie made a revelation that left her breathless. "Mommy, I know about the name you wanted to give me, but you never told anyone. I know you thought about calling me Hope because you wanted me to be your hope." Emily froze. It was true, during the first few weeks of her pregnancy, she had considered the name Hope, but had never told anyone, not even Michael. Hearing it from Sophie confirmed that what was happening was real. And at that moment, Emily knew she needed to go back. She needed to be there for her daughter, who was waiting for her with all the love in the world. Sophie's revelation left Emily stunned. How could his unborn daughter know something so intimate and personal? The name Hope had been a secret Emily had held close to her heart, an alternative to the name Sophie she had considered in the early days of her pregnancy. Now, hearing that name spoken by her daughter, she could no longer deny the reality of what was happening. Sophie's presence, her voice and her tears, everything was too real to be just a dream or a hallucination. Emily felt a deep connection with Sophie, something that transcended space and time. As tears streamed down Emily's face, she realized she was faced with an impossible choice. If she stayed in this place, which seemed to be surrounded by peace and serenity, it would mean abandoning Sophie, who had not yet had the chance to live. But returning to life meant facing all the uncertainties and dangers of the ongoing birth. Emily knew that, as a mother, her first and most important mission was to protect her daughter, but the fear of not being able to survive this ordeal was overwhelming. Sophie, sensing her mother's internal conflict, tightened her grip on her mother's hands. "Mommy, I know you're scared, but you're the strongest person I know. I need you to show me the way, to guide me in life. I want to live, I want to be by your side. Please do not leave me." Sophie's words, full of love and despair, penetrated deep into Emily's heart. She knew she couldn't leave her daughter alone. The maternal instinct, the need to protect her daughter, began to overcome the fear. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find the strength within herself. She knew that what was about to happen wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that, as a mother, she was willing to fight until the end for her daughter. "I'll be back, Sophie," Emily said, her voice firm and determined. "I promise I will fight with all my might to be there for you. No matter what happens, I won't give up on you." As she said these words, Emily felt a wave of determination and courage fill her being. Sophie smiled, a smile full of relief and gratitude. "I knew you wouldn't leave me, Mom. You have always been my hero, and I will always need you." Sophie's smile brought new hope to Emily, reinforcing her decision to return. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but she also knew that, together, they could overcome anything. The love between mother and daughter was a powerful force, something Emily now understood in a way she had never imagined before. With one last look at Sophie, Emily felt the world around her begin to change. The soft light began to fade, and the feeling of heaviness in his body began to return. She knew she was coming back to life, back to the operating room, where the battle for her life and Sophie's life would continue. But now, with the certainty that her daughter was waiting for her, Emily was ready to face anything. She would open her eyes again, with a promise to protect and love Sophie with everything she had. And so, with renewed determination, Emily began her journey back to the world of the living. Emily felt a sudden tug, as if she were being dragged back to the surface after diving into the depths of the ocean. The soft, peaceful light that surrounded his encounter with Sophie began to fade, replaced by the feeling of heaviness and pain in his physical body. Still, her daughter's plea echoed in her mind, filling her with a determination she had never felt before. Sophie needed her, and that was stronger than any fear she might have had. As the light around her faded, Emily looked at Sophie one last time, her heart sinking over the decision she had made. The young girl was still there, looking at her with eyes full of hope and love. "Mommy, "Please come back to me," Sophie asked again, her voice now softer but still full of urgency. The connection between them was palpable, something that transcended logic and reason. Emily knew her daughter was calling her back to life, and that call was something she couldn't ignore. Emily's mind began to fill with memories and thoughts about everything she still needed to live with Sophie. She imagined her daughter's first steps, her first words, the sunny days in the park, the peaceful nights rocking Sophie to sleep. "I thought about all the stories I still needed to tell, about all the hugs I hadn't yet given." The idea of losing all of this, of not being there to see her daughter grow up, filled her with unbearable pain. But this pain was also the fuel for his decision. As these thoughts ran through her mind, Emily felt a new surge of energy. The promise he made to Sophie, to come back and be there for her, began to manifest itself as an almost physical force. She knew she couldn't give up now. "I'm coming back, Sophie," Emily murmured, more to herself than her daughter. The words came out with effort, but they were filled with an indomitable will. Sophie, upon hearing this, smiled, a smile full of confidence and hope. The field of light that surrounded them began to dissipate completely, and Emily felt the physical world around her begin to reappear. The pain intensified again, but this time, she was prepared to face it. She knew she had to fight, not just for herself, but for Sophie, who was eagerly awaiting her. Sophie's face began to fade, but the image of her daughter, and the sound of her voice, would forever be etched in Emily's heart. With one last exchange of glances, Emily temporarily said goodbye to Sophie, knowing that their reunion in the real world would be the beginning of a new life for both of them. Suddenly, Emily felt a jolt of reality as she was thrown back into her body. The operating room reappeared around him, the worried faces of the doctors and the frantic sound of the monitors filling his senses. She opened her eyes, with difficulty, but determined to keep fighting. The experience she had just had with Sophie wasn't something she could rationally explain, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that she was back, ready to do whatever was necessary to bring Sophie into the world safely. Emily woke up in the operating room and immediately felt intense pain, as if her body was fighting against an overwhelming force. Reality came rushing back like a violent wave, and the sense of safety and peace she had felt in Sophie's presence was replaced by a raw, brutal urgency. The doctors around him were moving quickly, their voices steady and full of concern. Emily realized that something serious was happening, but at the same time, she felt an inner strength that kept her steady. Sophie's vision was still fresh in her mind, and it drove her to fight with all her might. She knew she couldn't give up now. There was a life inside her, a life she had just come to know in such a deep and spiritual way. Every scream of pain that left her mouth was accompanied by the memory of Sophie's smile, of the words she spoke, asking Emily to return to her. It gave Emily the strength she never knew she possessed. The doctors continued to work quickly, and although the pain was excruciating, Emily remained focused. She felt Sophie's presence beside her, even if it was only in the memory of her experience. It kept her going, even when it felt like her body was on the verge of collapse. Every second felt like an eternity, but Emily knew that every second was a step closer to holding her daughter in her arms. She clung to that idea like an anchor, holding her steady as the doctors did everything they could to save them both. As the surgery continued, Emily began to have flashes of memories, as if her life was flashing before her eyes. But instead of past moments, what she saw were visions of the future, moments that hadn't happened yet, but that she knew were coming. She saw Sophie running through the halls of a house, laughing as Michael chased her. He saw himself teaching Sophie how to ride a bike, holding her as she pedaled for the first time. She found herself sitting next to Sophie, helping her with her homework, and later, getting ready for the school dance. These visions gave Emily renewed strength. She knew Sophie's future depended on her fighting now. It didn't matter how intense the pain was, or how difficult the moment might be. She had to survive, she had to bring Sophie into the world and be there to guide her through life. The visions were not just dreams, they were promises, moments that she was determined to live alongside her daughter. And with that determination, Emily felt a wave of energy pass through her body, as if every cell was responding to the call to fight. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Emily felt the tension in the room ease. The doctors' faces began to relax, and she heard the sound that changed everything, a baby's cry. Sophie was there, alive and healthy. Tears filled Emily's eyes as a nurse brought her daughter closer to her. Even though she was exhausted and in pain, Emily felt an indescribable joy when she held Sophie for the first time. She looked into her daughter's eyes, those same eyes that had asked her to come back, and knew that everything she had been through was worth it. She was there, and so was Sophie. The future she saw was just beginning. Emily, still weak and exhausted, lay in her hospital bed, holding Sophie in her arms. The experience she had gone through was still fresh in her mind, and she couldn't help but relive every moment of that surreal encounter with her daughter. Sophie, now asleep on his chest, was living proof that it had all been real, in a way that transcended any logical explanation. Emily felt a connection with her daughter that went far beyond the natural bond between mother and daughter. It was something spiritual, almost sacred. While gently caressing Sophie's little face, Emily reflected on everything that had happened. She thought of the young girl she had found in that field of light, of the way Sophie had asked her to come back to life. Emily knew this experience would change her forever. She felt grateful to have been given a second chance, not just to live, but to be a mother, to be there for Sophie in a way that now had a much deeper meaning. Michael entered the room, briefly interrupting his thoughts. He approached with a smile of relief, his eyes full of love and gratitude. "You did it, Em. You too did it," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. Michael knew the birth had been complicated, but he had no idea the depth of Emily's experience. She smiled at him, trying to find the right words to explain what had happened, but realizing that she might never be able to fully convey what she felt in that other world. "Michael, I saw our daughter before she was even born," Emily finally said, her voice low, almost reverent. "She was there, asking me to come back. It was like she already knew everything, like she knew I needed to fight for her." Michael frowned in confusion, but when he saw the sincerity and intensity in Emily's eyes, he realized that something extraordinary had really happened. He held her hand firmly, offering support without needing to explain. "I believe in you, Em. And I'm so glad you came back to us." In the days that followed, as Emily recovered, she continued to reflect on her encounter with Sophie. It wasn't something she could easily discuss, even with Michael. It felt like a special secret between her and Sophie, something that connected them in a special way. Unique shape. Emily knew she had been given a new perspective on life, on what really mattered. The near-death experience was not just a traumatic event, it was a revelation, a confirmation that a mother's love for her daughter was an immeasurable force, capable of transcending even the barrier between life and death. As Emily watched Sophie grow, she held this experience deep in her heart, knowing there was something sacred about her mission as a mother. She felt more connected to the present, with every moment spent with Sophie and Michael, appreciating the little things that once seemed insignificant. Sophie's laugh, the touch of her little hand, the sparkle in her eyes, all of it was a constant reminder that life was precious, and that she had been given the greatest gift of all, the chance to be a mother and to live fully at her daughter's side. Emily knew that although she couldn't control everything that would happen in the future, she was ready to face any challenge. The near-death experience had given him renewed strength, a clarity of purpose. She was determined to be the best mother she could be to Sophie, to guide her with love and wisdom, and to make the most of every moment. Life, Emily realized, was a series of second chances, and she was determined not to waste hers. After Sophie's birth and Emily's transformative experience, the Carter family's life took a new direction. The house, once so lovingly prepared for Sophie's arrival, was now full of life, with the soft sound of a baby and suppressed laughter echoing through the hallways. Each day brought a new discovery for Emily and Michael, and Sophie quickly became the center of their world. But for Emily, every moment with her daughter now had a much deeper meaning. Emily began to see life with different eyes. What was once just a daily routine now felt like a priceless gift. Every smile Sophie made, every new sound she made, filled Emily with indescribable joy. She didn't just watch her daughter grow up, she was actively involved in every little detail of their lives, valuing the time they spent together in a way that only someone who had been on the brink of losing everything could understand. Emily knew she had a greater mission, to be the mother Sophie needed, guiding her with love and protection. Michael also noticed the change in Emily. She seemed more present, more connected to what really mattered. The near-death experience had given Emily a new perspective, and this was reflected in the way she lived each day. Michael deeply admired her for this, and the bond between them grew even stronger. They became even more dedicated partners in raising Sophie, sharing the joy and challenges of parenthood with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. Despite the happiness that now filled her days, Emily never forgot what she had experienced during those moments between life and death. Every now and then, she found herself remembering her encounter with Sophie, the young woman who had called her back to life. The experience felt like a dream, but at the same time it was more real than anything she had ever experienced. Emily knew that that experience shaped her in profound and lasting ways, and that she would always carry with her the wisdom and love she found in that moment of transition. As time passed, Emily began to feel the need to share her story. She knew that what she had gone through could offer hope and comfort to others facing similar situations. However, it was such a personal and intimate story that Emily was hesitant to tell it to anyone other than Michael. But seeing Sophie's happiness and renewed strength in her own life, Emily realized that maybe this story could help other mothers find the strength they need. So, Emily decided to start writing about her experience, transforming her emotions and memories into words that could reach and touch other people's hearts. She didn't know exactly where it would take her, but she felt that sharing her journey was a way to honor the life she and Sophie had been blessed to live. And with that, Emily embraced this new phase of her life, knowing that, even in the most difficult moments, there was a light that would always guide her, the unconditional love she felt for her daughter. As time passed, Emily dedicated herself to writing her story, transforming the words into a powerful narrative about life, death, and the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. She knew her experience could resonate with others, especially those who have experienced loss or near loss. The process of writing was therapeutic for Emily, helping her process her emotions and find even greater meaning in everything she had experienced. When Emily finally finished writing her story, she decided to share it with a small group of mothers she had met in an online motherhood support community. The responses he received were overwhelming. Many women were deeply moved by Emily's story, feeling a connection to her journey of struggle and resilience. They shared their own stories of challenges and triumphs, creating a circle of support and empathy that Emily had never imagined. Encouraged by the positive response, Emily decided to broaden the reach of her story. She began speaking at hospitals, support groups, and motherhood events, where she spoke about her near-death experience and the powerful revelation she had upon finding her unborn daughter. Emily addressed themes such as fear, loss, inner strength, and, above all, the power of maternal love. Her words deeply touched everyone who heard her, and her talks often ended with tears and emotional hugs. Emily's story began to gain attention in the local media, and soon she was invited to appear on radio and television programs, where she shared her experience with an even larger audience. Each time she told her story, Emily felt more connected to Sophie and the purpose she had found. She knew she was making a difference, helping other mothers find strength and hope in their own journeys. People's response was inspiring, and this further fueled Emily's determination to continue. In addition to speaking engagements and interviews, Emily began collaborating with authors and psychologists, writing chapters for books about motherhood and near-death experiences. Her story was often highlighted as an example of resilience, and she became a respected voice in the community. Although she never planned to follow this path, Emily embraced the role her experience gave her, using her story to inspire and encourage others. Over the years, Emily watched Sophie grow strong and healthy, more curious and full of life every day. Every time she looked at her daughter, she was reminded of why she had fought so bravely to return to life. Sophie, still little, didn't fully understand the story her mother told so many people, but she felt the love and gratitude that emanated from Emily. And that, for Emily, was the greatest gift of all, knowing that no matter what happened in the future, she had done everything in her power to be there for her daughter, guiding her with love and wisdom. As Sophie grew older, Emily saw reflected in her daughter's eyes the strength and determination that helped her overcome her toughest challenges. The connection between the two was unbreakable, and Emily knew that the near-death experience had sealed a special bond between them, one that would transcend time and distance. She taught Sophie about the value of life, courage, and unconditional love, always remembering the meeting they had in that field of light, where Sophie called her back to life. Emily continued to share her story over the years, becoming increasingly aware of the impact her words had on people's lives. She was approached by other mothers, fathers, and even young people who had lost their own parents, all thanking her for bringing hope and strength through their words. Emily realized that her testimony was not just about a personal experience, but about a universal truth, the power of love and forgiveness, and the human ability to overcome even the greatest adversity. Sophie, in turn, grew up knowing that there was something very special about her mother. Although still young, she felt the deep love Emily had for her, a love that was forged in the battle for life. As Sophie grew older, Emily began to tell her, little by little, the story of her birth and the extraordinary experience that connected them in a unique way. Sophie, fascinated, listened attentively, knowing that there was something deeply important in this story, something that spoke about the true meaning of life and love. Over time, Sophie became a strong and independent young woman, following her mother's teachings and developing her own perspective on life. She inherited determination and courage from Emily, and carried with her the lesson that, no matter how difficult things become, there is always a reason to keep fighting. Sophie knew that her mother had fought for her, and this became the basis of her own inner strength.